Can close your books for a minute. Who am I kidding? A couple minutes. Shana Tova, everyone. A little Torah from John, Paul, George, and Ringo. Eleanor Rigby picks up the rice in a church where a wedding has been, lives in a dream, waits at the window, wearing the face that she keeps in a jar by the door. Who is it for? All the lonely people. Where do they all come from? All the lonely people. Where do they all belong? Father Mackenzie, writing the words of a sermon that no one will hear. No one comes near. Look at him working, darning his socks in the night when there's nobody there. What does he care? All the lonely people. Where do they all come from? All the lonely people. Where do they all belong? Eleanor Rigby died in the church and was buried along with her name. Nobody came. Father Mackenzie, wiping the dirt from his hands as he walks from the grave, no one was saved. All the lonely people. Where do they all come from? All the lonely people. Where do they all belong? It is not a surprise that during the height of COVID, loneliness was at an all-time high. What you may not be aware of is that in a 2024 Gallup poll, loneliness was measured to affect 20% of US adults. This is 3% higher than pre-pandemic and just 5% lower. To give you an idea of numbers, this would be estimated at about 52 million people. It continues to be a main concern for the Surgeon General and other health officials. But the reality is that this is not something they can do much about, if anything. How does one cure loneliness? Often the place to start is with an understanding of the illness itself. I've been thinking a lot about this, as it's one of those ailments that we can't readily see in someone else. It's not like a cold where with several sneezes, one could say, oh, they must have loneliness. In fact, most of us mask our loneliness, not wanting it to show or be recognized by others, but secretly hoping that someone will notice and help us through it. Several years ago, I was part of a certification in mental health first aid. This was specifically designed around the work I was doing with teens, but it was incredibly powerful and relevant for any work. In the training, there was a story about a young man from San Francisco. He was dealing with terrible loneliness and depression. He left his house one morning with the plan to take his life on the Golden Gate Bridge. He told himself that if anyone would say hi to him or ask how he was, he wouldn't do it. Unsurprisingly, no one did, and he jumped off the bridge. He happened to survive the jump. It was a crazy chain of events and quite miraculous, but his message to the many groups he shares this with is that you never know how a simple, caring, kind greeting will change the course of someone's life. He also highlights that loneliness is similar to invisibility. In his case, he felt invisible, unseen, and insignificant. Insignificance is a large factor in loneliness and depression. Many of us have moments when we feel invisible and insignificant, when we don't think that it really matters what we think or want, when we feel helpless to the realities of life around us and feel like whatever our contribution could be would be insufficient and not make a difference. There are many times when we wonder if anyone would notice if we were gone, or if it really matters to anyone that we show up at all in the first place. It was a combination of these feelings that led this young man to the bridge that day. How many people are heading to the bridge even now? All the lonely people. Where do they all come from? All the lonely people. Where do they all belong? If we are to attempt to find the remedy to loneliness, one also needs to know what it looks like not to be experiencing loneliness. Did you know that there is no exact antonym for this word? Merriam-Webster offers 26 similar and opposite words, but not one singular antonym. Psychology Today gave the following answer to what is the opposite of loneliness. Alone is a neutral description of a state that can be experienced any number of ways. Loneliness is, by definition, painful. The opposite of loneliness is contentment or joy. It is living your most meaningful life, the life you want to live, rather than the life you think you should be living. In a Reddit chat on the same topic, people offered search results of the words connected or complete. These last two words, connected and complete, put me immediately in mind of the Genesis text, fitting with Rosh Hashanah and the birthday of the creation of human beings, where God determines that it is not good for Adam, to be alone, and therefore Eve enters the picture. This is an interesting case study because Adam is certainly not alone in the garden. There is God, as well as all the creatures previously created. For those of us that have pets, we know what an amazing company they can be. Often getting a cat or dog is a prescription for warding off loneliness. But somehow this wasn't just about the physical state of isolation or not having anything around. There would have been plenty of living things around him. This seems to point to something different that was missing and a different kind of emotional need. I think we can all relate to the notion that sometimes being alone is wonderful. It allows us time to think, focus on the things we want or need to, recharge our batteries. Alone is not necessarily lonely. And it is also the case that we can be surrounded by many others and feel a deep sense of loneliness. Sometimes being in certain crowds can make us feel much more lonely than we are alone. I often use the example of being at a party where it seems like everyone else has someone to talk to, but you don't. You feel like an outsider, disconnected and unrelatable to the group. I love the idea of anti-loneliness being defined as feeling connected and complete. I think there's something very profound to explore in these two words. If we accept the premise that Adam was not alone, but rather lonely, then what he was missing was another being in his life that he could connect with on a different level. Someone who would truly be bone of his bone and flesh of his flesh. Someone who would get him in a way that no other living thing that was created could. The text doesn't really give us a deep view of their relationship, but whatever it was that God saw as the problem, Eve seemed to be the appropriate solution. I want to be clear that I am not suggesting that marriage is the answer to curing loneliness. It may be an answer for some, but speaking from personal experience, the wrong marriage can also be a cause of loneliness. I am suggesting, however, that deep relationships where one can feel completely seen and connected to the other person is an essential component. What's also clear is that while God is in the mix and an important part of Adam's life, God alone is not enough. The text implies we need it all. Human connections, connection to the physical world, and connection to the divine. The combination of all three is what makes Adam complete in the end, as Eve is additive, not a replacement for something already in Adam's life. So we have now identified 3 important types of relationships that contribute to curing loneliness. 1, relationship with the divine, God, or let's say a force greater than ourselves. 2, relationship with creation, connecting to the physical world of nature, animals, and environment. And 3, relationships with other people, deep friendships, partnerships, dare I say, community engagement. Here is where I think the Psychology Today piece really makes sense. Loneliness is, by definition, painful. The opposite of loneliness is contentment or joy. It is living your most meaningful life, the life you want to live, rather than the life you think you should be living. The idea that contentment and joy comes from living your most meaningful life is incredibly beautiful. And the caveat that this should be the life you want to live, rather than the life you think you should be living, adds an extra dimension. There is no doubt that the outside world has great influence on what we perceive joy and contentment come from. There is a definite, palpable pressure around materialism and a notion that success is measured by that outcome. I'm hardly one to judge others. As Madonna said in the 80s, we are living in a material world, and I am a material girl. I am certainly one to enjoy the wonderful things in my life, but I am also aware that the joy and contentment I get from them is much shorter lived than the deeper lasting sense of joy and contentment that I get from the people in my life. Expectations and entitlements are dangerous. It's hard not to compare what we have to others and to get tricked into thinking that social media snapshots of others' lives are the full reality of what they experience. It's rare that we have moments where everyone we love and everything we are doing fits the picture-perfect image we think we should have as our lives. We hold our lives up to a standard that actually doesn't exist in reality. And when it doesn't measure up, we feel the disappointment. We feel like we are on the outside. We can feel lonely. All the lonely people, where do they all come from? All the lonely people, where do they all belong? The challenge is really in knowing ourselves, knowing what will bring us joy and contentment, knowing what will give us a meaningful life, not getting seduced by what the outside world tells us we should find meaning in. I think our relationship with God can do wonders in helping with this clarity. A focus on the divine also means a focus on gratitude. It shifts us from an entitled place to one where we're able to take a step back and say, wait, I should be happy that I even woke up this morning. I should be happy that my body is functioning, and let the day flow in that pattern from there. It's impossible to have a complete focus and awareness of all the blessings that we have each day. It would be overwhelming. But even the act of realizing that we aren't entitled to have the sun rise each morning is a step in the right direction. And once we remove the entitlement, we can begin to explore the things that actually bring meaning to our lives. I find that when I take time to talk to God and go inside myself, I discover things about myself that I wouldn't otherwise. Sometimes it can be painful, but often it gives me strength too. When I bring my relationship with God into the mix of my relationship with the physical world and my relationship with others, finding meaning, joy, and contentment seems much easier. A stripping of entitlement leaves room for a mindfulness of the other. This lets me get out of an extreme focus on my own needs and think about what someone else may need from me. It's like shopping while on your cell phone. Many of us multitask in this way. I find myself so often on the phone while I'm running errands, And then I get to the checkout counter and basically ignore the person helping me because I'm so engrossed in my call or my own needs. I'm sure many of you have had this happen too. It's not done with any bad intent, but I wonder how the person at the checkout feels. My guess is insignificant, probably a growing feeling as more self-checkouts and automated services are being created. How much more so when we do it to the people we love. The rabbis must have known a thing or two about this as well. We find it in Pirkei Avot, chapter 1, Mishnah 15. Shammai says, "V'hevei mekabel et kol ha'adam b'sever panim yafot." Receive every person with a pleasant countenance. And later in chapter 4, Mishnah 15, Rabbi Matya ben Harash said, "Mokdim b'shalom kol adam." Upon meeting people, be the first to extend greetings. When you put these together, the result is a call to positive action. Not only should we greet people, but we should be the ones to initiate it, and we should do it with our best positive face forward. A few years ago, my dad and I started to put this in practice. We were often running errands together or walking the dog. Every time we came across someone, we said hi, waved, or had short conversations with people. It's amazing what the result is when you do this. I couldn't believe people's willingness to open up and share about their jobs, kids, spouses, other relatives, issues going on in their lives, both good and bad. With every time we chatted, the connection grew a bit more. After October 7th, my heart was warmed by the number of neighbors and various people we had met that asked how we were doing and made a point to share their personal support. I don't think this would have been the case had we not already established those connections. I've tried to take this a step further in my work by developing these kinds of connections with the various vendors we hire for events. It may take me an hour to order our butterflies for Rosh Hashanah, but I would not miss the annual check-in that Tamara and I have each year at this time. This year, we said to each other that even though we had never met in person, we feel like old friends. There is no question that these moments create meaning, joy, and contentment in my life. Each interaction allows for a little bit of loneliness to be kept at bay, and these connections actually matter to most people. It is fundamentally untrue that our presence in this world is insignificant. We know we matter to the divine. As Rabbi Nachman said, "On the day you were born, God decided the world could no longer exist without you in it." And we know that the people we love matter greatly to each of us, and we should trust that we matter to them. But not everyone feels like they have these relationships. Making friends and finding soulmates gets harder and harder as we get older. Life and technology have a way of pulling us inward and isolating us, as opposed to reaching and branching out to others. So how do we develop these relationships and deepen them to a place where we feel significant to someone else and they feel significant to us? How do we cure this epidemic of loneliness? I want to leave us with a mandate. Show up fully. Be ready to be the first to greet others and be greeted. Be present and not multitasking. Make a real effort to get to know others and be brave enough to let others get to know you. Leave the judgment and measuring stick of success at home. Be authentic in who you are and accept people in the same vein. Know that you are wanted here. Your presence is significant. You never know the difference your warmth and greeting can mean for someone else too. All the lonely people. Where do they all come from? All the lonely people. Where do they all belong? I can tell you, they belong here. Here with God. Here with our community. Right here at Colomet.